when you made the decision to start escorting, was there also like the same disconnect? Because a lot of people probably think that's wild, right? Like we see these movies like, what's that movie on HBO, The Call Girl or Girlfriend Experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's most people's knowledge when it comes to escorting, or they think the opposite, which is someone who's very like hooked on drugs and in poverty and doing it because like they have to, right? Like there's very few people that would look at you and think, you know, she probably escorts, right? Like you look just homey, like sweet.
Yeah, escorting
wholesome is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I look like a girl next door, which is somewhat intentional.
Yeah.
Ooh, excuse me. When I was escorting, escorting felt like the best sex work to me. Like the healthiest, easiest to do.
Really?
Yeah.
How is that? How?
Believe it or not. I think it was because there wasn't an asymmetry in attention. Like it was always one-on-one. And with online work, it's like one to many. I do a thing and then like 1,000 people see it. Or like if somebody sends me a message, I have to respond to 100 messages that day. And so there's some like necessary dehumanization that occurs both ways. Like people kind of have to dehumanize me because they know that I'm like this object of gaze like up here. And I sort of have to dehumanize them because like I functionally can't humanize every single person who watches me or like wants to talk to me. But with escorting, it felt like closest to actually an organic human experience. And there was still a weird dynamic, but it felt like I actually got the time to get to know somebody and have a real connection with them. And often it was, you know, not meaningful, but sometimes it was really meaningful. Like I actually ended up making really good connections with people and feeling like maybe I was benefiting people's lives in a way that was much more obvious. And so it was so much more fulfilling. That would be, if I could make as much money escorting as I do on OnlyFans, that would be my ideal form of work.
I think that's going to be like very surprising to a lot of people because it seems like it would be a very scary line of work to get into, right? Because I mean, I don't know like the vetting process or your vetting process, but it does seem that you could be in a potentially dangerous situation. So would you say that's a lot of the reason why people are pushing to legalize it is to make it safer?
Yeah, I mean, decriminalization would be great. I'm like really wary of more restrictions getting put on what I decided would be best for me individually. I was lucky. All of my online sex work training like helps me know how to market really well. So I was pretty good at marketing myself and I charged quite a lot of money, about $1,200 an hour. And so that helped automatically filter for people who are wealthy clients, and wealthy clients tend to treat you better. So I was very lucky. I only had like maybe 2 experiences that were scary. But screening goes a long way. The one worst experience I had was a guy who I think I forgot to screen. I screened everybody, but like one guy fell through the cracks. I don't know what happened. And it just like, I didn't like do a thorough job. And then that was the guy that fucked me over. But most standard screening is, you get references from 2 other girls. So you have, 2 other girls like contact you and be like, yes, this guy was good. And that is pretty good. You check those girls and make sure that they are verified, they're valid, they're real people who actually see clients. And that helps.
Mm-hmm. So for these more meaningful experiences, can you like elaborate, or do you feel like that'd be an invasion of like privacy? Because I think for a lot of people, they have that idea that it's just like getting used and a dollar exchange and there's nothing more behind it. Because I do think that for a lot of men, because obviously men are going to be the biggest consumer when it comes to that, I can totally see where that could be needed for some people. I know that's going to sound like crazy to some, but some people don't have another means for that human connection or for that intimacy. And I think that between consenting adults that they should be able to do whatever they'd like. So I'm hoping you can maybe share a little bit, but if not, I totally understand.
Yeah, I'd like to. I leave them anonymous. But like some of them were virgins who were just terrified and like wanted to have somebody experienced and accepting to guide them through it. And that felt great. Some people just felt really rejected by women and really sexually insecure and wanted basically help. Like, how do I just teach me how I can become like a more sexually confident man to be able to go on and be sure of myself when I interact with other real women. One guy who I think is like the most meaningful one for me was, I entered the hotel room with him and I could just sort of feel like sadness emanating off of him. And I sort of like became sad with him. And like, I asked, like, are you, like, what's happening? And then, we ended up just like holding each other and crying. And he just like sobbed into me, and we took off our clothes to have skin to skin contact and just like pressed our bodies together. And he like held me and just sobbed. And I was there for it. Like it felt really good. And it's so hard for men to be able to have something like that. And so for this guy, I would see him, once a month or something. And sometimes we would have sex, sometimes we wouldn't, but it was just a lot of skin to skin contact. I can't say that word. And him just like emotionally processing things with me there to witness and hold him in that and to be sad with him. And that was incredible. And I don't think like a therapist can't do that. Like there's no other system that we have in place to be able to like have that kind of experience for a guy. And I was so happy to be able to provide that. And there, of course, were other guys, like some guys had a wife who like hadn't had sex with them in 20 years. And one guy had cancer. He had found out that he was going to die. And he was like, I don't want to die without having sex again. And my wife won't touch me. It's like, so, and I don't want to ruin my life. I don't want to like leave her and explode everything we've built. I just want to have a sexual outlet. So he figured like if he found an escort, it would be like safe and contained and not fuck anything up. And he could just go have this thing before he went and died. So he did, and I got to be that for him. So there was a lot of shit that like a lot of guys who like obviously didn't seem to care for me, but there was also a lot of guys who I felt like I was actually performing a really important service for their life, and I loved that. And I don't get that quite as much with OnlyFans, which is my main complaint, is that I don't have enough intimacy with the people that I talk to.
Yeah, it's hard when you do everything virtually. Even when you're doing something that's like a live stream, it's just not the same. Like you can't have that connection. Like you said, when you picked up the sadness, I don't think that would happen virtually unless you're a very skilled person. Like you just don't have that electromagnetic information that's being exchanged. I had a follow-up to that. Oh, so why do you think it is? Because I think like a devil's advocate or an opposing view would be like, well, why did that man not have someone else to cry with? Like why, like that should have been the role for his wife, or that should have been the role for his girlfriend. And you are impeding on their intimacy by doing that. So for that argument, like what's your perspective?
The guy who cried with me didn't have a wife or girlfriend. He was severely depressed and lived alone with a dog. And just didn't have that option. I think he didn't feel capable of maintaining a serious relationship with somebody because he was so depressed, really. But also, like, I don't see intimacy with somebody who's not your spouse as inherently bad. And if there is like intimacy that the spouse would prefer to have, then it seems like there's something wrong with their relationship. Sometimes sex work would be unneeded if the world were more perfect. That seems true. And I think there's still times where it would be needed if it were perfect. So it really depends on the exact situation.